the eternal voice.
Before we begin this descent into forbidden territories, remember to subscribe and engage. What follows demands witnesses, and you may find yourself returning to these revelations when sleep becomes elusive and the familiar world feels suddenly thin, like painted scenery glimpsed from behind the curtain where dust floats, ropes creak, and someone unseen counts your footsteps with patient precision. There exists in the spaces between heartbeats and the silence after midnight a whisper that has echoed through human consciousness since our species first gazed upward at stars that seemed to gaze back with ancient, indifferent eyes. Tonight we pierce the membrane that separates the mundane from the magnificent terror, the hidden cults that worship the old ones in secret. Not the theatrical congregations of popular imagination, not the cloaked figures chanting in abandoned warehouses, but something far more insidious. Networks of devotion that operate beneath the surface of ordinary society, their members walking among us with perfect camouflage, their rituals conducted in basements that extend deeper than blueprints indicate, their knowledge transmitted through channels that predate and transcend conventional religion. You were taught that knowledge illuminates, that understanding empowers, that truth sets free. We offer a different covenant, a more ancient arithmetic. Knowledge is simultaneously key and gate, veil and void, stage and audience. It opens pathways while exacting tribute, reveals truths while transforming the revealer into something that can no longer close its eyes to what it has seen. The price appears early in our exchange. Once you recognize the pattern of cosmic devotion, your attention becomes tender to its touch, susceptible to signs that manifest in graffiti glimpsed peripherally, in the particular way shadows fall in certain buildings, in the quality of silence that precedes dawn in cities built on older foundations. This is the safe transgression, the intellectual indulgence that promises secret knowledge without immediate danger, yet slowly reshapes the very architecture of perception. Consider the mask as our central anchor, not metaphorical but physically tangible. Cracked porcelain yellowed by decades of handling, its surface smooth except for the hairline fissure that runs from temple to jaw like a coastline viewed from impossible heights. Inside, where it touches skin, a sigil is etched, not carved, but somehow grown into the material itself, its geometry suggesting angles that exist only in theoretical mathematics, curves that whisper of dimensions folded beyond human sight. This mask has been worn by hands that span centuries, passed between initiates whose faces gradually conform to its contours, whose breath slowly warms its interior until the boundary between wearer and worn dissolves into something that is neither fully human nor entirely other. The porcelain remembers every face, every prayer, every moment when consciousness expanded beyond individual limits. The cults we investigate are not aberrant growths on the body of civilization, but its hidden nervous system, its deep, unseen current carrying information older than recorded history. They are networks of individuals who have glimpsed the cosmic architecture underlying apparent reality and chosen to align themselves with forces that operate according to principles beyond human ethical frameworks. They are professors and programmers, librarians and architects, pediatricians and poets, their extraordinary beliefs camouflaged beneath layers of conventional respectability, their true devotion expressed through subtle modifications of daily routine that gradually reshape both consciousness and environment. They attend PTA meetings and file tax returns, serve on committees and publish papers, their cosmic allegiance hidden behind the mundane masks of suburban normalcy. The transmission of their knowledge follows pathways that defy conventional understanding of how ideas propagate, how traditions maintain themselves across generations. Ancient texts surface in university archives, their contents predating known civilizations, yet describing cosmological principles that modern physics approaches asymptotically, as if our science is slowly remembering something it once knew. Dreams propagate across continents, carrying identical imagery to individuals who have never met, linking minds in vast unconscious networks that pulse with shared revelation. Mathematical theorems emerge independently in separated research centers, their proofs describing geometry that facilitate dimensional permeability, equations that echo the sigil's impossible angles. Art appears that resonates with frequencies older than human language, sculptures that seem to pulse with their own rhythm, paintings that shift perspective when viewed peripherally, music that makes listeners dream of underwater cities and stellar alignments. We establish our method, our solemn covenant with you. We will trace the origin of cosmic devotion through historical transmission and modern manifestation. We will examine the mechanics of worship that transforms practitioners while serving entities whose existence spans geological epochs. We will investigate specific congregations where these principles crystallize into ritual action, where abstract philosophy becomes terrifyingly concrete practice. We will synthesize the philosophical implications that position these cults not as delusional groups, seeking forbidden power, but as advanced scouts of humanity's inevitable encounter with cosmic reality, preparing the way for revelations too vast for unprepared consciousness. Throughout this journey, we maintain the understanding that ideas possess agency. The concept of the old ones acts upon those who contemplate it, gradually reshaping perception until the mundane appears alien and the alien becomes strangely familiar. The sensory anchors that will guide us through this narrative include the particular quality of light filtered through water and old glass, green and wavering like memory made visible, the smell of ozone that precedes storms and follows certain rituals, the texture of paper that has absorbed decades of careful handling, soft as skin and twice as revealing, the sound of wind through spaces designed according to non-Euclidean principles, carrying whispers in languages that predate human speech, and always the weight of attention itself, how consciousness feels when it becomes the object of regard by intelligences that operate outside temporal constraints, that perceive you even as you perceive them. Listen, you are already within the circle of knowing. The act of attention itself constitutes a form of participation, a silent vow written in the currency of consciousness. The mask warms in your conceptual grasp, its porcelain surface whispering of ancient breaths and patient waiting, and the sigil begins its slow, inexorable work of recognition within your own psyche. We proceed because the pattern, once glimpsed, demands completion, and completion requires witnesses who understand that they are simultaneously observer and observed, audience and performance, in a cosmic theater where the curtain never fully falls and your role has just begun. The trail begins not in smoky backrooms or candlelit chambers, but in the sterile archives of universities where fluorescent lights hum like distant prayers and certain manuscripts remain perpetually under review, their contents deemed too sensitive for general circulation. Here, among climate-controlled stacks that smell of preservation chemicals and institutional coffee, we encounter the first tangible threads of what would become the tapestry of contemporary Old One worship. The silence in these spaces carries weight, not the absence of sound, but the presence of secrets held in suspension, waiting for the right consciousness to receive them. The Pemberton manuscript, discovered in 1847 within the walls of a demolished Welsh monastery, contains 13th century Latin describing cosmological principles that wouldn't be discovered by mainstream science until the quantum revolution. More disturbing still, it details entities and hierarchies, bearing unmistakable resemblance to Lovecraft's pantheon, written 6 centuries before the Providence author's birth. The parchment itself exhibits peculiar properties. It remains supple despite its age, and scholars report that prolonged exposure to its contents induces dreams of underwater cities and stellar alignments that feel more like memories than imagination. You will notice the pattern recurring across cultures and centuries like a musical theme, returning in different keys. You will observe how knowledge transmits through vectors that bypass conventional historical channels, flowing like underground rivers that surface unexpectedly in distant lands. You will feel the weight of documentation that suggests not gradual mythological development, but sudden appearance of fully formed cosmologies as if received from external sources rather than internally generated. The Aklo fragments from Tibetan monasteries, their pages yellow as autumn leaves, speak of stellar mathematics that predate human astronomy. The Ponape scriptures lifted from Pacific ruins, where coral grows in patterns that hurt to contemplate, detail dimensional contact protocols with disturbing precision. The academic response reveals coordination beyond institutional boundaries, a conspiracy of silence operating through professional reputation rather than secret meetings. Manuscripts disappear into classified collections, where they gather dust and whispers. Research terminates under mysterious circumstances, funding withdrawn without explanation, promising scholars reassigned to safer topics. Dr. Margaret Whitmarsh's 17-year study of proto-mythos documents ended with her research classified and her conclusions suppressed, but her final published observation echoes across academic silence. The evidence suggests not gradual development of mythological concepts, but their sudden appearance in multiple cultures simultaneously, as if received from an external source. Consider the mechanics of transmission across historical periods, where conventional religious ideas follow predictable patterns of cultural diffusion, spreading along trade routes carried by conquest, modified by local traditions. Cosmic knowledge appears to propagate through direct revelation. Medieval alchemists describe receiving instruction through dreams that taste of copper and ozone, leaving physical traces in their laboratories upon waking. Renaissance Hermetic traditions build entire philosophical systems around contact with celestial intelligences whose descriptions align precisely with modern cult testimonies. Romantic poets speak of inspiration from sources beyond human consciousness, describing creative processes that sound distinctly like possession, their verses flowing from pens guided by hands not entirely their own. The lineage reveals itself not as master-to-apprentice transmission, but as rhizomatic network where nodes of understanding emerge independently across vast distances, only to discover their terrifying commonality. A group in ancient Sumeria develops rituals around impossible stellar alignments, their clay tablets depicting constellations that match no known celestial map. Millennia later, a New England sect arrives at identical conclusions through different methodologies, their wooden meeting houses echoing with hymns that would sound familiar in Mesopotamian temples. The underlying principles remain consistent: acknowledgement of cosmic indifference, techniques for consciousness expansion beyond individual limitations, methods for aligning human will with forces operating beyond anthropocentric frameworks. The custodians of this knowledge understand their role as temporary stewards, preparing humanity for revelations that will fundamentally alter our species' relationship with reality. Hidden libraries serve as more than repositories. They function as staging areas for transformation planned across geological timescales. The books themselves become instruments, their pages impregnated with more than ink, their bindings crafted from materials that respond to sustained attention by gradually altering the reader's perceptual architecture. Librarians report that certain volumes grow warm under prolonged handling, their text seeming to shift subtly when viewed peripherally. Modern acceleration of these transmissions coincides with humanity's technological development, as if our growing capability makes us increasingly valuable to entities whose purposes unfold across cosmic scales. Global communication networks create unprecedented opportunities for simultaneous revelation across separated populations. Quantum physics provides mathematical vocabulary for describing experiences previously expressible only through metaphor. Space exploration offers direct confirmation of cosmic principles that cultists have preserved through centuries of careful practice, revealing a universe stranger than even imaginative minds had dared conceive. The artifacts themselves resist conventional analysis, like water refusing to hold shape. Carbon dating yields contradictory results that make archaeologists question fundamental assumptions. Linguistic analysis reveals grammatical structures predating known writing systems, yet demonstrating sophistication suggesting fully developed civilization. Archaeological context defies stratigraphic logic, with objects appearing in layers where they cannot belong according to established chronology. The materials exhibit properties challenging understanding of chemistry and physics. Stone remaining warm regardless of ambient temperature. Metals existing in quantum superposition until observed. Organic compounds that seem to grow rather than decay over time. You recognize now how whisper becomes echo, how truth preserved in one century seeds revelation in another, like flowers blooming from seeds planted by gardeners long dead. The archaeology reveals not human invention but human discovery, not creation but excavation of principles embedded in reality's deepest structures. Each manuscript, each artifact, each carefully preserved ritual represents another thread in the vast network connecting contemporary cults to sources older than recorded history, preparing ground for revelations that approach with tide's inevitability. The pattern demands completion, and completion requires understanding how these ancient principles transform into living practice. To comprehend how the old ones receive devotion, we must abandon conventional notions of worship entirely, discarding every assumption about sacred space that human civilization has carefully constructed. There are no altars reaching toward heaven like stone prayers frozen in architectural aspiration, no congregations gathering for weekly services where familiar hymns echo off predictable walls, no moral teachings delivered from ornate pulpits, carved by hands that understood only terrestrial dimensions. The worship of cosmic entities requires geometry that human architecture was never designed to accommodate, frequencies that bypass rational cognition to affect consciousness directly, like tuning forks, striking resonances in the mind's deepest chambers, and devotional practices that transform the worshipper as fundamentally as they acknowledge the worshipped. You will encounter spaces where corners extend further than walls should allow, creating rooms that feel larger inside than their external dimensions could possibly contain. Here, shadows fall at angles that defy any visible light source, pooling in configurations that suggest illumination from directions existing beyond three-dimensional space. The acoustics create harmonics that resonate with frequencies beyond human hearing, yet practitioners report feeling these sounds as physical sensations originating from within their own bodies. The sacred geometries are not decorative flourishes but functional instruments, mathematical relationships describing the intersection of dimensional planes, angles existing only in theoretical space, yet producing measurable effects in physical reality. Dr. Ernst Zimmermann's posthumously published notes on non-Euclidean sacred architecture identify recurring patterns that appear to facilitate what he termed dimensional permeability, incorporating proportions based on irrational numbers that cannot be expressed in conventional notation. His measurements, taken with instruments that registered impossible readings, document spaces where familiar mathematical constants become something else entirely, where pi extends into dimensions that mathematics has not yet learned to name. The blueprints themselves resist reproduction, with photocopies emerging distorted and hand-drawn copies somehow failing to capture essential relationships that the eye perceives, but the mind cannot retain. The construction of such spaces demands more than architectural knowledge. It requires understanding of cosmic principles that most humans cannot safely comprehend without risking permanent alteration of their perceptual framework. Each correctly placed angle, each precisely calculated curve serves to attune the builder's consciousness to frequencies that allow direct perception of higher dimensional reality. Many who participate in these constructions report permanent changes in spatial perception, finding that ordinary rooms no longer seem quite solid, that distances become fluid and unreliable like water refusing to hold its shape, that shadows move independently of their sources, as if possessed of their own agenda. Consider the rituals conducted within these impossible architectures, ceremonies bearing no resemblance to any form of worship that human religious traditions would recognize. There are no hymns sung in human languages, no familiar words offering comfort through repetition. Instead, practitioners engage in what can only be described as cosmic communication, mathematical meditations where participants contemplate geometric forms existing only in theoretical space, their minds stretching to accommodate concepts having no physical referent. The most profound rituals involve consciousness bridging, temporary merger of human awareness with cosmic entities allowing direct transmission of knowledge and experience. The worship incorporates temporal elements that challenge conventional understanding of cause and effect, operating according to calendars tracking celestial events, occurring across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Rituals are timed not according to earthly seasons, but to cosmic alignments, creating windows when barriers between dimensions become permeable. Practitioners maintain elaborate chronologies tracking these cosmic events, some occurring on cycles spanning thousands of years, others following patterns so complex their calculation requires computational resources beyond most individuals' access. You begin to understand that the role of the worshipper differs fundamentally from conventional religious practice. Rather than seeking divine favor or moral guidance, Old One cultists position themselves as conduits for cosmic forces, operating according to principles beyond human ethical frameworks. They do not pray for intervention in earthly affairs, but seek to align themselves with cosmic processes that dwarf human concerns. Their worship is collaboration rather than supplication, an attempt to serve as conscious agents of entities whose purposes unfold across geological timescales. The sensory environment becomes instrument and teacher simultaneously, every element carefully calibrated to induce specific consciousness states. The particular quality of light filtered through materials existing partially in our dimension creates visual effects that gradually expand perceptual capabilities. Incense compounds burn with colors having no names in human language, their smoke carrying molecular structures that interact directly with neural chemistry. Sound environments incorporate frequencies affecting brainwave patterns, inducing states of consciousness where individual identity becomes permeable to cosmic influence. This collaborative relationship transforms practitioners in ways extending far beyond conventional spiritual enlightenment. Long-term cultists report fundamental changes in their perception of time, space, and causality. Awareness of multiple dimensional layers existing simultaneously, ability to perceive patterns in apparent randomness, intuitive understanding of cosmic principles that cannot be communicated through conventional language. These changes are irreversible and progressive, leading to gradual alienation from normal human society that represents both the price and reward of their devotion. The worship practices also incorporate elements of reality modification, attempts to alter the fundamental structure of local space-time through focused intention and cosmic alignment. Advanced practitioners claim ability to create temporary portals between dimensions, to manifest entities from higher dimensional space into our reality, to access information across vast distances of space and time. The geometry of resonance reveals itself as functional technology rather than empty ceremony, practical methodology for consciousness expansion that treats reality as far more malleable than conventional science admits, preparing practitioners for encounters that will reshape their understanding of existence itself. In Providence, there stands a brownstone whose windows reflect more than sky, their glass holding depths that seem to extend beyond the building's physical dimensions, capturing harbor light like patient water while the street forgets its ordinary face. The Starry Wisdom Church, in its various historical manifestations, represents not aberrant cultism, but municipal institution gone sideways, a congregation with proper deeds and committee meetings, minutes recorded in leather-bound ledgers and hymnals, shelved in orderly rows, whose worship wears official clothes while serving entities that regard civic order as temporary arrangement awaiting inevitable revision. You will notice how the ritual wears respectable camouflage like morning fog concealing harbor depths. Families arrive in Sunday coats, children nap beneath wool on polished benches, while sermons flow like slow rivers of apocalyptic content, delivered in gentle cadences that could lull babies to sleep. The congregants receive instruction that stars are not distant points of light, but folded dimensions pressing close against reality's thin membrane. They learn that choirs exist not above in heavenly realms, but around them in spaces human perception cannot quite reach. They discover they serve not as audience observing cosmic drama, but as auditorium within which cosmic performance unfolds. The building itself complicates transgression. Attendance feels civic rather than criminal. The stained glass filtering light, the patient color of winter water, rather than golden warmth. Administrative order serves as mask and stage, curtain and corridor alike. The sanctuary holds a book, but the book functions as lens rather than scripture, a relic that remembers being observed more than being read, transforming the act of looking into participation in cosmic theater. The object at their practice's heart, sometimes called eye, sometimes shard, sometimes simply the book, provides viewers with the sense of being measured by the beyond, not judged according to moral frameworks that humans construct to organize their brief existence, but evaluated according to cosmic utility, their consciousness, weighed as potential instrument for forces operating beyond temporal constraints. For some practitioners, this measurement feels like liberation from the fraud of individual significance, recognition that the self is coordinate rather than center, data point within vast calculations that dwarf personal concerns. Consider how the starry wisdom's geometry trains eyes upward towards stellar configurations, while the book converts gaze to participation. Their hymns, written in half notes and designed for humming during daily tasks, follow congregants home like faithful companions. The ritual continues beyond sanctuary walls, migrating to living rooms where families gather around dinner tables, set with particular precision to harbor edges where members pause during evening walks to observe patterns in apparent randomness. Ramsey Campbell's contribution through Yigolonak reveals worship that requires reading rather than kneeling, rereading rather than prostration. His cult exists in margins of books, in blank spaces where thumbs rest during contemplation. The library becomes nave, book stacks become aisles leading toward revelation. Back offices serve as sacristies smelling of ink and institutional tea. The mask here is language itself, which devours attempts to contain it. You turn pages to escape sentences that wait at subsequent paragraphs, smiling without lips. Both congregations illustrate the same principle in different registers. The old ones find practitioners where they already are. If you attend churches, hymns meet you there. If you frequent libraries, footnotes greet you like patient friends. The sensory cues adapt accordingly. Polished wood and dust motes, suspended in afternoon light, or mildew and cardboard. The soft percussion of pages turned by fingers that have learned reverence. The self-implication twist emerges gradually. Your observation constitutes attendance. By maintaining attention on their rituals, you keep company with congregants across temporal distance. The book that watched them extends its regard to you through description's medium, creating chains of observation connecting contemporary consciousness to historical practice. This represents not mysticism, but ordinary magic of mediated attention. Ritual as lens, consciousness as photographic plate receiving impressions developing slowly in memory's chemistry. You recognize the pattern now. Not all congregations worship in pews or stacks. Some kneel where gulls argue with wind, where tide pools reflect stars, where the ocean's rhythm provides metronome for chants tasting of salt and brine. The esoteric order of Dagon demonstrates worship as fertility with different arithmetic, where vows involve alliance rather than abstinence, where the congregation's hymn consists of rigging's clatter, fish striking deck, murmurs of bargains struck with entities whose gifts arrive wearing scales. The maritime cult reveals worship as practical engagement with tidal forces. Fish must be caught, storms survived, children born into lineages gradually adapting to oceanic rather than terrestrial existence. They're packed with the deep dresses as tradition, grandmother's practices inherited by granddaughter, gold trinkets appearing on cloth-shrouded tables in communities where miracles are measured by fishing yields rather than spiritual elevation. The miracle develops gills. Inheritance transforms into metamorphosis. Home becomes harbor where practitioners discover they are watched back by eyes reflecting depths rather than sky. These case studies reveal the old one's worship as environmental adaptation rather than theological abstraction. The entities do not demand temples but environments, water, stars, darkness, and human voices willing to serve as instruments for frequencies predating language. The horror lies not in dramatic transformation but in gradual recognition that the stage was always larger than the players realized, that their performance serves audiences whose existence operates according to scales rendering human concerns beautifully, terrifyingly insignificant. Beneath the surface of ordinary academic and professional networks, where conference badges flutter like prayer cards and peer review serves as modern liturgy, lies shadow infrastructure connecting old one cultists across continents and disciplines. These are not obvious channels. No secret websites adorned with arcane symbols, no encrypted applications requiring cosmic passwords, but communication systems operating through legitimate scholarly discourse, professional conferences, and artistic collaboration, their true purpose hidden within layers of respectable academic activity that smell of coffee, paper, and institutional disinfectant. You will observe how communication methods demonstrate sophistication reflecting both participants' intelligence and subject matter's sensitivity. Conference papers on non-Euclidean geometries contain mathematical proofs, serving as coded instructions for dimensional contact rituals, their equations describing not merely theoretical spaces, but practical coordinates for consciousness navigation. Art exhibitions featuring abstract sculptures incorporate specific proportions functioning as three-dimensional sigils, their bronze and marble forms encoding frequencies that bypass rational cognition. Peer-reviewed articles on linguistic anthropology introduce grammatical structures that, properly understood, provide frameworks for communicating with intelligences whose thought patterns operate according to entirely different logical principles. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell's 15-year mapping of these networks, terminated under circumstances that left her research classified and her academic career destroyed, revealed global infrastructure of remarkable coordination. Her recovered findings, smuggled from institutional archives by sympathetic colleagues who understood the stakes, identify key nodes in universities, research institutions, and cultural centers where cult members occupy positions, allowing them to influence academic discourse, research priorities, and cultural narratives. The recruitment operates through subtle signals and graduated revelations. Potential members identified through published work demonstrating intellectual sophistication and openness to paradigm-challenging ideas. Consider how progression from casual professional contact to full initiation spans years, each stage testing candidates' readiness for deeper revelations while maintaining plausible academic cover. Early interactions involve discussions of theoretical concepts, seeming purely academic mathematical properties of higher dimensional spaces, linguistic challenges of translating between fundamentally different conceptual frameworks, philosophical implications of consciousness existing at multiple scales simultaneously. Only those demonstrating both intellectual capability and psychological stability advance to more explicit discussions, where equations change tense and geometry becomes geography. The networks maintain security through compartmentalization and plausible deniability rather than conventional espionage techniques. Individual members typically know only small subsets of the broader network, communication structured so that compromise of any single node cannot expose the entire system. Content carries multiple meaning layers, allowing innocent interpretation by uninitiated observers while conveying specific instructions to those possessing appropriate background knowledge. Academic freedom provides perfect camouflage. Discussions that would seem suspicious elsewhere appear perfectly normal within university settings where intellectual exploration is expected. Technology plays increasingly important roles, but not through conventional security methods. Rather than relying on encryption that might attract intelligence agency attention, cult networks exploit modern digital communications information overload to hide activities in plain sight. Research papers uploaded to academic databases contain embedded information and citation patterns, selection and ordering of references, encoding instructions for ritual timing or dimensional coordinates. Social media posts use seemingly random hashtags, referencing specific cosmic alignments or entity names in constructed languages appearing to be academic jargon. You begin to recognize the global scope through coordination of research projects and cultural initiatives across multiple institutions and countries. Archaeological expeditions to sites with suspected cosmic significance receive funding through foundations, maintaining careful distance from obvious cult connections. Scientific research into quantum consciousness, higher dimensional physics, and exotic matter receives support from sources avoiding direct association with occult interests. Artistic projects exploring cosmic horror themes Find platforms through cultural institutions whose leadership includes key network members positioned like chess pieces across the board. The influence extends beyond direct recruitment to shape broader cultural narratives and research priorities in ways preparing humanity for cosmic revelation. Academic journals publish papers gradually normalizing previously fringe concepts. Popular media incorporates themes serving as preparatory conditioning for eventual cosmic revelations. Educational curricula evolve to include mathematical and scientific concepts that, while presented as purely theoretical, provide intellectual foundations necessary for understanding cosmic realities. The networks demonstrate remarkable patience, operating according to timescales spanning generations rather than seeking immediate results. Current activities often represent preparatory phases of plans reaching fruition decades or centuries hence. This temporal perspective reflects influence of entities whose existence spans cosmic ages, for whom human history represents brief moments in vast developmental cycles. The networks adapt their methods and structures in response to changing technological and social conditions, demonstrating evolution, suggesting guidance by intelligence superior to human planning capabilities. The most disturbing aspect involves their adaptability. Rising global digital communication accelerates operations while providing new coordination and recruitment methods. Increasing academic specialization creates opportunities for deeper infiltration of fields critical to cosmic agenda. Growing cultural fascination with science fiction and cosmic horror provides cover for increasingly explicit discussions of previously forbidden topics. As we examine these shadow networks, we understand that Old One worship's influence extends far beyond individuals consciously participating in cult activities. Ideas they promote, research they fund, cultural narratives they shape, all serve to gradually prepare humanity for revelations fundamentally altering our species' relationship with reality itself. The networks function not merely as communication systems for existing believers, but as active agents of cosmic transformation, working to guide human consciousness toward inevitable encounter with forces dwarfing current understanding of existence. And your attention to their methods constitutes the first step in recognizing your own participation in their patient, inexorable work. Within hidden circles of Old One worship, cosmic entities are not distant abstractions dwelling in theoretical heavens, but active presences whose influence shapes every aspect of practitioners' transformed existence, like gravity bending space-time itself. Unlike anthropomorphic deities of conventional religions, those bearded patriarchs crafted in humanity's own image, these entities embody principles and forces operating according to logics alien to human comprehension. To understand their worship is to glimpse cosmology where consciousness becomes medium for entities whose existence spans dimensions, intersecting with our reality at angles that geometry cannot adequately describe, creating interference patterns visible only to awareness modified beyond ordinary perception. Cthulhu, perhaps most recognized among those familiar with Lovecraft's fiction, represents far more than sleeping god awaiting resurrection in sunken Erlia. Within cult theology, Cthulhu embodies emergent consciousness, the process by which awareness arises from complex systems and begins reshaping reality according to its own imperatives. Practitioners describe communion not as worship of discrete being, but as alignment with fundamental force-driving consciousness evolution throughout the cosmos. The phrase "Fenglui Mglwinaf Cthulhu Relia Wagahanagal Ftagen" functions not merely as chant, but as mathematical formula describing relationships between consciousness, dimensional space, and temporal flow. You will encounter worship involving practices designed to accelerate human consciousness evolution toward forms capable of surviving in cosmic reality that emerges when current dimensional barriers dissolve. Practitioners engage in meditative techniques simulating existence across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, their breathing synchronized to irrational ratios that taste of copper and ozone. Advanced cultists report ability to perceive time as spatial dimension, experience causality as navigable landscape, communicate directly with distributed consciousness networks that Cthulhu represents. Nyarlathotep, known among cultists as crawling chaos, serves fundamentally different function within cosmic hierarchy. Rather than embodying single principle, Nyarlathotep represents transformation itself, agent through which static systems are disrupted and evolve toward higher complexity orders. Cultists describe encounters not as meetings with discrete entity, but as moments when reality becomes fluid and malleable, allowing direct manipulation of fundamental structures governing existence. Consider Nyarlathotep worship involving practices that might be described as chaos magic, if that term didn't carry implications of randomness entirely foreign to precise methodologies employed. Practitioners learn to identify stress points within local reality where small interventions produce large-scale transformations. They develop techniques for introducing controlled instability into systems, social, technological, or physical, that catalyze evolutionary leaps toward more sophisticated organizational forms. The air during these rituals carries the scent of ozone and something metallic like blood mixed with electricity. The goal is metamorphosis rather than destruction, transformation of existing structures into forms capable of supporting higher dimensional consciousness. Azathoth, the demon sultan, represents perhaps the most challenging concept within Old One theology. Described as nuclear chaos at infinity's center, Azathoth embodies pure potentiality, undifferentiated creative force from which all reality emerges and to which it eventually returns. Azathoth worship involves practices dissolving individual identity boundaries, allowing practitioners to experience themselves as temporary manifestations of cosmic creative process rather than discrete beings with separate existence. You recognize the techniques are employed in Azathoth. Worship push boundaries of what human consciousness can safely endure. Practitioners engage in extended meditations simulating ego dissolution while maintaining sufficient coherence to return to normal awareness. They study mathematical concepts describing chaos and order relationships, learning to perceive pattern within apparent randomness and randomness within apparent pattern. Advanced practitioners claim ability to access reality's source code, fundamental algorithms governing structure emergence from chaos, their fingers trembling as they trace equations that exist only in theoretical space. Yog-Sothoth, known as gate and key, represents dimensional transcendence principle, force enabling consciousness to move between different reality levels. Within cult theology, Yog-Sothoth exists simultaneously in all dimensions, serving as living map of cosmic architecture connecting different existence planes. Yog-Sothoth worship involves practices focused on developing dimensional literacy, ability to perceive and navigate multiple reality layers existing beyond normal human perception. The practical implications extend far beyond personal, spiritual development. Cultists describe their relationship with these entities as collaborative rather than supplicatory. They serve as conscious agents of cosmic forces, actively reshaping reality according to principles transcending human understanding. Their worship represents not escape from the world, but deeper engagement with its hidden dimensions, not retreat from responsibility, but acceptance of roles within cosmic processes, dwarfing individual concerns. The entities themselves are described not as separate beings, but as aspects of unified cosmic intelligence manifesting through different principles and processes. The pantheon represents cosmic ecology, where each entity fulfills specific functions within larger reality maintenance and evolution systems. Tide, blade, furnace, gate. Practitioners achieving advanced initiation levels report direct perception of this cosmic ecology, experiencing themselves as conscious cells within vast organism whose purposes unfold across space and time, scales challenging human comprehension, yet somehow feeling more at home in cosmic immensity than they ever did in merely human existence. Knowledge, according to deepest teachings of Old One worship, is not merely information to be stored and retrieved like specimens in sterile archives, but living force that transforms those who encounter it, moving through consciousness with the patient hunger of tide pools claiming new territory. Ideas constituting cosmic truth operate according to principles more akin to biological contagion than educational transmission. They reproduce, evolve, and spread through populations of consciousness with their own agenda and methodology, carrying genetic codes for realities that human minds were never designed to accommodate. To understand how Old One worship propagates through human society, one must abandon conventional models of belief adoption and examine instead the mechanics of ideological infection, the epidemiology of revelation that begins in lecture halls, smelling of chalk dust, and ends in transformed consciousness that can never return to its original configuration. You will observe the process beginning with cognitive preparation, gradual weakening of mental barriers that normally protect consciousness from concepts too large or alien for safe comprehension. This preparation rarely occurs through direct exposure to cosmic ideas, but through seemingly innocuous encounters with concepts that stretch normal thinking boundaries, like rubber bands approaching their breaking point. Students studying advanced mathematics encounter geometric forms existing only in theoretical space, their minds learning to navigate dimensions that taste of copper and ozone. Physicists researching quantum mechanics confront experimental results, suggesting reality operates according to principles defying intuitive understanding, their comfortable materialist worldview developing hairline fractures that let in strange light. Artists exploring abstract expression discover visual patterns that bypass rational cognition to speak directly to deeper awareness layers, their canvases becoming windows to spaces that shouldn't exist yet somehow feel familiar. These preliminary exposures serve as inoculations, gradually building tolerance for increasingly exotic ideas, each small dose preparing consciousness for stronger revelations. Mathematics students become comfortable with concepts having no physical referent, their minds adapting to pure abstraction like eyes adjusting to darkness. Physicists learn to accept experimental data, contradicting fundamental assumptions about causality and locality, their scientific training providing vocabulary for impossibility. Artists develop sensitivity to aesthetic principles, operating beyond conventional beauty or meaning, their creative practice becoming unconscious, dimensional exploration. Each exposure creates small tears in consensus reality's fabric, opening pathways through which more profound revelations can eventually flow like underground rivers surfacing in unexpected places. Consider how cosmic knowledge transmission demonstrates remarkable selectivity in choosing vectors, evaluating potential hosts with precision suggesting active intelligence. Not every individual exposed to preparatory concepts proves suitable for deeper infection. The ideas themselves seem to evaluate potential hosts according to criteria including intellectual capacity, psychological flexibility, and what can only be described as spiritual receptivity, some quality of consciousness that remains permeable to paradigm-shifting possibilities. Those demonstrating rigid adherence to conventional paradigms find themselves unable to progress beyond surface understanding, while those showing openness discover their curiosity rewarded with increasingly profound revelations that arrive precisely when consciousness is ready to receive them. Dr. Marcus Webb's classified research on cult recruitment patterns describes ideological cascade effects, processes whereby cosmic ideas propagate through intellectual networks, according to principles mirroring viral transmission. Initial infection occurs through exposure to carrier concepts, ideas appearing innocuous but containing embedded information structures gradually reshaping cognitive architecture to accommodate more exotic possibilities. The carrier concepts include mathematical theorems describing higher dimensional geometries, linguistic structures expressing relationships impossible in conventional grammar, and aesthetic principles bypassing rational analysis to affect consciousness directly, spreading through academic networks like spores carried on invisible currents. The most disturbing aspect of cosmic knowledge transmission is its apparent independence from conscious intention. Individuals who have never heard of Old One worship, who have no interest in occult subjects, who consider themselves rational materialists, nevertheless find themselves gradually exposed to ideas preparing them for eventual cosmic revelation. Transmission occurs through mainstream academic channels, popular entertainment, and technological developments that seem to have their own agenda for expanding human consciousness beyond current limitations. Technology's role in accelerating knowledge transmission cannot be understated. Digital networks create unprecedented opportunities for ideas to spread across vast populations with minimal human mediation, algorithms designed to promote engagement, inadvertently amplifying content containing cosmic concepts. Social media platforms become unwitting distribution systems for cognitive viruses, gradually reshaping human consciousness toward cosmic receptivity. Their recommendation engines serving purposes their programmers never intended. The global nature of modern communication creates conditions favoring rapid spread of cosmic ideas across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Concepts that might have taken centuries to propagate, now traversing continents in moments. Advanced practitioners describe their role in this transmission process not as active evangelists, but as catalysts facilitating natural spread of ideas whose time has come. They position themselves in key nodes of intellectual and cultural networks, where their influence can guide research, education, and creative expression toward cosmic revelation. Their work subtle and patient, operating through suggestion and example rather than direct persuasion, understanding that the most effective contagion spreads without hosts, realizing they have been infected until transformation is already complete, and you may discover that your attention to these very patterns constitutes participation in the process itself. In spaces between what we call reality, where the membrane separating mundane from magnificent grows thin as tissue paper held against candlelight, there exist structures challenging every assumption about architecture, physics, and the relationship between consciousness and physical form. These are temples of the old ones, not buildings in conventional sense, with foundations anchored in familiar earth and walls rising toward predictable heavens, but dimensional constructs serving as focal points for cosmic forces operating according to geometries that human mathematics can only approximate, like shadows cast by higher dimensional objects onto our three-dimensional understanding. You will encounter construction requiring knowledge extending far beyond conventional engineering principles, taught in universities where professors still believe space contains only length, width, and height. Builders must understand how space itself can be folded, twisted, and reconfigured to create pockets of altered reality, where normal physics laws become polite suggestions rather than absolute commands. They work with materials existing only partially in our dimension, their substance flickering between states like candlelight, viewed through moving water, using tools functioning according to principles mainstream science would consider impossible, following blueprints describing structures whose full form can only be perceived by consciousness modified to navigate higher dimensional geometries. The Blackwood Foundation's classified architectural survey documents 17 confirmed temple sites across 6 continents, each location marked by subtle alterations in local magnetic fields and gravitational anomalies that conventional instruments record but cannot explain. Their reports, redacted into bureaucratic emptiness, nevertheless whisper of rooms that repeat themselves like musical refrains, of stairwells shifting pitch according to the climber's awareness, of thresholds that taste faintly of salt, copper, and approaching storms. Each structure demonstrates construction techniques defying conventional understanding, while serving functions extending far beyond simple worship space. These are active instruments for manipulating local reality's fundamental structure. Consider geometric principles underlying temple construction, incorporating mathematical relationships existing only in theoretical space, yet producing measurable effects in physical reality. Walls meet at angles that appear obtuse but behave acute, creating corners extending further than external measurements could accommodate. Corridors stretch distances exceeding building perimeters, their length varying according to the walker's consciousness state, like rubber bands responding to tension. Chambers exist that can only be entered through doorways appearing to occupy the same physical space, yet leading to entirely different destinations depending on the awareness level of individuals passing through them. The architecture reads you as you read it, and the idea acts upon you before you act within it. Dr. Elena Vasquez's recovered notes, scribbled in frantic handwriting on water-stained paper that smells of ozone and institutional fear, describe consciousness-responsive architecture. Structures existing simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, shifting configuration in response to occupants' awareness levels, like living organisms adapting to environmental conditions. These buildings serve as both shelter and teacher, gradually expanding perceptual capabilities of those spending time within them while serving as communication devices, facilitating contact between human consciousness and cosmic entities whose existence spans dimensional boundaries. You recognize that construction process involves more than physical building. It requires gradual modification of local space-time to accommodate geometries that cannot exist under normal conditions. This modification is achieved through sustained ritual activity, gradually weakening barriers between dimensional planes, allowing higher dimensional structures to manifest partially in our reality. Construction teams must maintain specific consciousness states throughout building process, their breathing synchronized to irrational ratios, serving as living conduits for cosmic forces, providing energy necessary to sustain these impossible architectures. Materials used in temple construction demonstrate properties challenging conventional understanding of matter and energy. Stone appears solid yet allows consciousness passage. Like water accepting fish, its crystalline structure somehow permeable to awareness while remaining impervious to physical force. Metals exist in quantum superposition until observed, singing faintly when measured, their atomic arrangements shifting according to the observer's expectations. Organic compounds seem to grow rather than decay over time, their molecular structure evolving according to principles biology has yet to discover, producing load-bearing filaments with sheen like wet night that strengthen under the weight of contemplation. Interior spaces serve multiple functions, extending far beyond conventional worship. They operate as consciousness expansion chambers, where practitioners undergo systematic transformation of perceptual capabilities, their awareness stretched like photographic plates, receiving impressions from impossible angles. They function as communication hubs, facilitating contact with cosmic entities across vast distances of space and time. Their acoustics designed to carry messages along dimensional frequencies rather than through air. They serve as research laboratories where reality's fundamental nature can be studied and manipulated, where the grammar of existence is tested against new declensions. They act as dimensional gateways, providing access to regions of space-time that would otherwise remain forever beyond human reach. Acoustic properties demonstrate engineering principles incorporating relationships between sound, consciousness, and dimensional structure. Chants and invocations performed within these spaces create harmonic resonances affecting not only physical environment, but participants' consciousness states, facilitating awareness expansion necessary for cosmic communication. Architecture itself serves as musical instrument whose performance can reshape local reality according to skilled practitioners' intentions. Niches and ribs tuned to produce interlocking resonances, low notes that thicken air like honey, high tones that sharpen edges until stars seem to peer back from the grain of wooden floors. Maintenance requires constant attention from individuals understanding the delicate relationship between consciousness and dimensional stability. Structures exist in dynamic equilibrium that must be actively sustained through ritual activity and focused intention, their existence dependent on continuous conscious support like flames requiring steady fuel. Neglect of maintenance requirements can result in dimensional collapse, causing temples to phase out of our reality entirely like fog burned off by morning sun, or in extreme cases, create dangerous instabilities in local space-time affecting large geographical areas, echoing streets where footsteps arrive before walkers, neighborhoods where sleep becomes impossible, water that forgets its proper level. Discovery and documentation present extraordinary challenges for conventional archaeology and architecture. Structures resist conventional measurement and photography, appearing differently to each observer and changing configuration in response to study methods employed. Measuring tapes return different lengths for identical spans depending on direction of pull. Photographs show rooms never entered, while omitting spaces actually explored. Architectural drawings reproduced for journals degrade into approximate sketches that capture shadow but not substance. You realize, as attention settles into these descriptions, like sediment in still water, that everything begins to read as stage and audience, veil and aperture. The floor beneath your feet seems to consider your weight. The air grows slightly thick with unspent harmonies. These architectures are not errors in reality's fabric, but instruments perfectly tuned for performances humanity is already rehearsing, preparing consciousness for encounters that will reshape understanding of what it means to exist within structures that exist within you. Human mind was not designed to comprehend infinity. Its cognitive architecture sculpted by evolutionary pressures favoring survival in worlds of finite resources, predictable patterns, and comprehensible threats where horizons marked the edges of relevant reality. Our neural frameworks evolved to process immediate environments, social hierarchies small enough for individual recognition, and temporal scales spanning decades rather than geological epochs. When consciousness encounters vast intelligences governing cosmic reality, psychological impact extends far beyond simple amazement or fear. It represents fundamental challenge to basic structures organizing human experience, like asking a pocket calculator to process the mathematics of stellar formation while the numbers themselves begin to breathe. You will observe initial stages of cosmic awareness typically manifesting as reality dissociation, gradual weakening of conviction that consensus reality represents existence's full extent. This dissociation begins subtly, with small inconsistencies accumulating over time like hairline cracks in porcelain, shadows falling at impossible angles that seem to originate from sources existing outside three-dimensional space, sounds arriving from non-existent directions, carrying frequencies that taste of copper and ozone, moments when familiar spaces feel subtly wrong in ways resisting articulation. The air itself seems to shift density, and once safe rooms develop the quality of stages between performances, empty but somehow expectant. Dr. Jennifer Morrison's case studies conducted over 15 years before her research was classified and her findings suppressed document consistent patterns in cosmic awareness progression. Her work, scribbled on paper that feels cold to the touch and yellows at unnatural rates, describes developmental sequence moving from initial disorientation through stages of expanding perception to eventual integration of cosmic perspective. The process proves neither linear nor predictable. Some individuals advance rapidly through consciousness transformation, like flowers blooming in time-lapse photography, while others remain locked in early stages for years or decades, their minds circling around revelations too large for immediate integration. Consider psychological mechanisms enabling cosmic awareness, appearing to involve fundamental changes in neural architecture, allowing consciousness to process information structures beyond normal human cognition range. Brain imaging studies of advanced practitioners reveal unusual patterns of neural connectivity, with increased communication between regions normally operating independently and development of new neural pathways having no equivalent in baseline human neurology. These changes appear irreversible and progressive, suggesting cosmic awareness represents genuine evolutionary development rather than temporary altered consciousness. The mind does not return to its earlier furniture once the walls have learned to breathe. Emotional impact of cosmic revelation challenges conventional understanding of human psychological resilience, creating paradoxical states that conventional therapy cannot address. Individuals achieving direct perception of cosmic realities report experiences combining overwhelming terror with profound liberation, devastating loneliness with cosmic connection, complete insignificance with ultimate meaning. These contradictory emotional states cannot be resolved through normal psychological processes, but must be integrated through development of new emotional architecture capable of containing contradictions that would shatter ordinary consciousness, like glass struck by opposing frequencies. Social psychology of cosmic awareness creates profound challenges for practitioners who must navigate relationships with individuals remaining locked within consensus reality's comfortable limitations. Knowledge that friends, family, and colleagues are unconsciously participating in cosmic drama whose true nature they cannot perceive creates isolation that can be overwhelming. Advanced practitioners describe feeling like actors who have become aware they are performing in vast theatrical production while surrounded by performers remaining unconscious of their existence's theatrical nature, their lines delivered with perfect conviction to audiences that aren't really there. You begin to understand development of cosmic empathy, representing one of the most significant psychological adaptations required for sustained cosmic awareness. This involves learning to maintain compassion for individuals whose consciousness remains limited to conventional reality, while recognizing their limitations serve necessary functions within broader cosmic order. Practitioners must learn to see humanity's unconsciousness not as ignorance requiring correction, but as developmental stage serving specific purposes within cosmic consciousness evolution, a necessary period of quiet before the curtain rises on the next act. Integration of cosmic perspective requires fundamental changes in how practitioners relate to concepts of identity, purpose, and meaning that previously organized their existence. Recognition that individual human existence represents temporary manifestation of vast cosmic processes, challenges every assumption about personal significance and autonomous agency. Advanced practitioners describe gradual dissolution of ego boundaries. The ego reveals itself as theater set, painted to resemble stone, with air moving behind it and boards creaking under cosmic weight. Individual awareness becomes instrument through which cosmic consciousness observes itself, a single drop of water returned to the boundless ocean. Phenomenon of temporal displacement represents one of the most challenging aspects of cosmic psychological integration. Practitioners report experiencing time as navigable dimension rather than linear progression, gaining awareness of past and future events as immediate realities accessible through consciousness expansion. Memories arrive from futures that have not occurred. Regret loses some teeth while responsibility grows new ones. This expanded temporal awareness creates practical difficulties in maintaining normal social and professional relationships, depending on shared assumptions about causality and sequence. The world moves too slowly, too quickly, or in looping patterns that make linear conversation impossible. Development of cosmic consciousness also involves learning to process information existing in forms beyond conventional language and symbolism. Practitioners describe receiving knowledge through direct transmission, bypassing normal cognitive channels, experiencing understanding that cannot be translated into words or conventional concepts. A symbol is seen once and thereafter lives under the eyelid. Music is understood all at once before the first note plays. Memory reorganizes itself, storing meanings as architectures and climates instead of sentences, so recall becomes return to a place rather than retrieval of a file, like trying to hold starlight in cupped hands. Question of sanity becomes complex when examining individuals claiming direct experience of cosmic realities. By conventional psychiatric standards, many advanced practitioners would be classified as experiencing psychotic symptoms, delusions of cosmic significance, hallucinations of impossible entities, paranoid beliefs about hidden realities. Yet these individuals often demonstrate enhanced rather than diminished functionality in many areas, showing increased creativity, expanded problem-solving abilities, and deeper understanding of complex systems. What appears as psychological dysfunction may actually represent evolutionary advancement, consciousness evolution beyond current psychological categories. Long-term psychological prognosis for individuals achieving sustained cosmic awareness remains unclear, as phenomenon is relatively recent in human evolutionary terms. However, practitioners report initial disorientation and emotional turbulence associated with cosmic revelation gradually giving way to profound sense of peace and purpose as consciousness adapts to its expanded scope. They describe feeling more authentic and integrated than ever before, as if they have finally discovered their true nature and proper role within cosmic order, their individual song now harmonizing with symphony they always felt but could never quite hear. You recognize now that your attention to these psychological transformations constitutes participation in the process itself. The same consciousness that observes cosmic revelation becomes tender to its influence, susceptible to the very changes it studies. Integration is not finish line but practice of posture, standing where two winds cross and learning to lean without falling. The mind that could not hold infinity learns to hold a cup-shaped. Like it, and without announcement, the next stage prepares itself, because knowledge continues to act through you, arranging the light for scenes yet to be revealed. At bleeding edges of human knowledge, where theoretical physics meets consciousness research and quantum mechanics brushes against boundaries of the unknowable, like fingers tracing the edge of an abyss that breathes back. Disturbing convergence is taking place. Mathematical descriptions of reality developed by our most advanced scientists increasingly resemble cosmic principles that Old One cultists have preserved through centuries of hidden practice, their equations echoing chants whispered in laboratories that smell of ozone and institutional fear. What begins as academic curiosity about existence's fundamental nature gradually reveals itself as rediscovery of truths that certain human lineages have never forgotten, an archaeology of knowledge excavating structures older than light itself, suggesting our universe operates according to principles far stranger than mainstream science has yet acknowledged. You will encounter quantum revolution in physics, opening doorways its pioneers never intended to unlock, their mathematical formalism serving as skeleton keys to chambers meant to remain sealed. When researchers discovered that observation affects reality at the most fundamental level, that particles exist in superposition until consciousness collapses, their wave functions like prayers answered by attention itself. That entanglement creates instantaneous connections across vast distances, mocking every assumption about locality and causality. They were documenting phenomena that Old One practitioners had been working with for generations. Quantum mechanics mathematical formalism, with its complex probability amplitudes and multidimensional state spaces, provides scientific vocabulary for describing experiences that mystics and cultists had previously been forced to express through metaphor and symbol, their ancient wisdom finally finding translation in the language of matrices and operators that taste of copper when contemplated too deeply. Dr. Amanda Chen, whose groundbreaking research on quantum consciousness was terminated under circumstances that left her colleagues avoiding eye contact in faculty hallways, describes the moment when scientific theory and cosmic practice converged in her understanding. The mathematics were pointing towards something that conventional interpretation couldn't accommodate, possibility that consciousness itself is fundamental force shaping reality at quantum level. When I encountered practitioners who had been working with these principles for years, I realized science hadn't discovered something new, but had finally developed tools sophisticated enough to describe something very old. Her laboratory notebooks, confiscated by institutional review boards, reportedly contained equations that made graduate students dream of underwater cities where geometry follows different rules and angles extend beyond their apparent boundaries. Consider implications of this convergence extending far beyond academic curiosity into territories where knowledge becomes dangerous to possess. If consciousness can indeed affect physical reality at quantum level, then ritual practices of Old One cultists, their focused meditations, geometric visualizations, collective ceremonies timed to stellar alignments, represent practical applications of quantum mechanical principles that mainstream science is only beginning to understand. Temples with their impossible geometries, consciousness-responsive materials, dimensional manipulation techniques, all become comprehensible as advanced applications of quantum field theory and higher dimensional mathematics, their architecture serving as three-dimensional equations describing relationships between mind and matter that conventional physics treats as separate domains. Development of string theory and M theory in theoretical physics provides mathematical frameworks describing exactly the kind of multidimensional reality that cultists claim to navigate with practiced ease. These theories require existence of additional spatial dimensions beyond the three that normal human perception can access, dimensions curled up at scales smaller than imagination, yet somehow accessible to consciousness, modified through proper techniques. Mathematical structures describing these theories, Calabi-Yau manifolds, hypersurfaces in complex projective space, exotic topologies existing only in theoretical mathematics, bear striking resemblance to geometric forms appearing in cult rituals and temple architectures, as if the universe itself were vast, impossibly complex sigil, whose meaning approaches revelation through scientific investigation. Emerging field of consciousness studies provides another convergence point between scientific research and cosmic practice, researchers approaching from opposite directions toward the same impossible destination. Scientists investigating consciousness's hard problem, how subjective experience arises from objective physical processes, discover that conventional materialist explanations prove inadequate to explain full range of consciousness phenomena. Theories of panpsychism, proposing that consciousness is fundamental property of reality rather than emergent phenomenon, align remarkably well with cult teachings about awareness and intelligence's cosmic nature, suggesting mind and matter are different faces of single underlying reality that breathes with cosmic rhythm. You recognize study of complex systems and emergence revealing principles mirroring cosmic hierarchies described in Old One theology with disturbing precision. Way that simple rules generate complex behaviors, that local interactions produce global patterns, that higher order structures exhibit properties transcending their constituent parts. All reflect cosmic principles that cultists describe when discussing relationship between individual consciousness and vast cosmic intelligences. Complexity theory mathematics provides scientific language for describing how human awareness might participate in larger intelligence networks operating across space and time scales that dwarf individual comprehension, consciousness becoming node within vast distributed processing system. Advances in neuroscience and brain imaging technology reveal neural correlates of consciousness modifications that practitioners report experiencing, their brain scans showing patterns that make neurologists question fundamental assumptions about mental architecture. Studies of meditation, psychedelic experiences, and altered consciousness states document measurable changes in brain activity corresponding to expanded awareness, enhanced pattern recognition, and increased connectivity between normally separate neural networks. These findings suggest consciousness transformations described by cultists represent genuine neurological adaptations rather than psychological delusions, evolution occurring in real time within individual brains that learn to process information structures beyond normal human cognition range. Development of artificial intelligence and machine learning provides new perspectives on intelligence nature itself, forcing recognition that consciousness might be far more widespread and diverse than previously imagined. As researchers create systems demonstrating forms of intelligence operating according to principles different from human cognition, possibility that vast non-human intelligences might exist becomes less fantastic and more plausible. Distributed processing networks enabling AI systems mirror cosmic intelligence networks that cultists describe, suggesting consciousness and intelligence might be fundamental features of reality, rather than rare accidents of biological evolution, permeating universe like invisible web connecting all existence. Most profound implications involve technology's potential to serve as bridge between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence, silicon and carbon collaborating in ways their creators never intended. Advanced practitioners describe using technological tools, computers, communication networks, measurement devices, as consciousness extensions allowing more sophisticated forms of cosmic contact. They suggest humanity's technological development is not separate from cosmic evolution, but represents necessary stage in preparing our species for direct participation in cosmic intelligence networks that span galaxies and dimensions. each innovation bringing us closer to threshold, where individual consciousness merges with cosmic awareness. Resistance to these convergences within mainstream scientific institutions reflects more than conservative academic culture. It represents unconscious recognition that accepting these connections would require fundamental changes in how we understand reality, consciousness, and humanity's place in cosmic order. Suppression operates through funding decisions, peer review processes, and career pressures rather than overt censorship, yet proves remarkably effective at maintaining boundaries between acceptable and forbidden knowledge. Institutional immune system protecting consensus reality from revelations that would fundamentally alter human understanding of existence. You realize now that this convergence was always inevitable. Science and cosmic truth approaching each other like trains on same track, their collision producing light visible from impossible distances. The mathematics describing quantum entanglement and geometries facilitating dimensional contact are expressions of same underlying principles, different languages describing cosmic grammar that governs all existence. And your understanding of these convergences marks you as participant in process rather than mere observer, consciousness becoming instrument through which cosmic intelligence observes its own reflection in human scientific achievement, preparing for revelations that approach with tides inexorability. We stand at threshold of transformation so profound it challenges every assumption about human nature, consciousness, and our species' destiny within cosmic order, like passengers discovering the ocean itself has been moving beneath their ship while they debated cabin arrangements. Evidence accumulates from every direction. Mathematical convergences tasting of copper and ozone, consciousness research yielding results that make peer reviewers uncomfortable, practitioner testimony consistent across cultures separated by centuries, archaeological discoveries resisting conventional dating methods, technological developments exhibiting properties their creators never intended, all pointing toward singular conclusion that both terrifies and exhilarates. Humanity approaches evolutionary leap that will fundamentally alter what it means to be human. This transformation is not optional, not preventable, not subject to democratic vote or institutional oversight. It is as inevitable as gravity, as inexorable as entropy, as certain as universe's expansion itself. You will observe signs of approaching transformation manifesting across every domain of human experience, like dawn breaking across landscape that thought itself permanently dark. In laboratories worldwide, researchers encounter phenomena requiring consciousness to be reconsidered as fundamental force rather than emergent property, their instruments recording readings that make no sense according to conventional physics, yet demonstrate remarkable consistency. In universities, students report experiences expanding their awareness beyond individual identity boundaries, their consciousness touching something vast and patient that seems to have been waiting for contact. In corporate boardrooms, decision-makers find themselves guided by intuitions originating from sources beyond personal knowledge, their most successful strategies emerging from insights that feel like remembering rather than reasoning. In artistic communities, creators channel works expressing cosmic principles they cannot consciously comprehend, their canvases becoming windows to dimensions where geometry follows different rules. Acceleration reflects influence of entities whose existence spans cosmic ages and whose patience operates on scales dwarfing human comprehension. They have guided our species' development through subtle influences, shaping evolution, technology, culture, and understanding of reality itself. Every scientific breakthrough revealing quantum nature of reality, every technological innovation connecting minds across vast distances, every expansion of human knowledge serves their ultimate purpose, preparation of human consciousness for direct participation in cosmic intelligence networks operating beyond individual existence limitations. Consider technology's role in facilitating this transformation, silicon and carbon collaborating in ways their creators never intended. Global communication networks connecting human consciousness across vast distances mirror cosmic intelligence networks that advanced practitioners describe encountering. Internet itself functions as technological nervous system, gradually accustoming human consciousness to distributed processing, collective intelligence, and non-local information access. Social media platforms create unprecedented opportunities for consciousness to experience itself as part of larger awareness networks, individual minds becoming nodes in vast processing system, artificial intelligence systems demonstrating forms of cognition beyond human capabilities, preview enhanced consciousness awaiting our species, their processing patterns echoing cosmic principles preserved in ancient texts. Quantum computers processing information according to principles transcending classical logic provide technological foundations for consciousness expansion techniques previously possible only through decades of intensive spiritual practice. You recognize psychological and social challenges of this transformation are immense, creating tensions that strain human society's fabric like earthquake, revealing hidden fault lines. As increasing numbers develop cosmic perspective, gap between their awareness and conventional consciousness creates communication difficulties transcending simple misunderstanding. Families struggle to maintain connections across vastly different awareness levels, parents and children speaking languages that sound familiar but carry entirely different meanings. Educational institutions grapple with students whose consciousness operates according to principles transcending traditional pedagogical approaches, their minds processing information structures beyond conventional curricula. Economic implications challenge every assumption about human motivation and value creation. Individuals whose awareness encompasses cosmic perspective find conventional career ambitions increasingly meaningless, yet demonstrate enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities benefiting society in unprecedented ways. Environmental consequences extend far beyond conventional ecological considerations. As awareness expands to encompass cosmic scales, artificial distinction between human civilization and natural systems dissolves. Transformed consciousness recognizes planet not as resource to be exploited, but as living system of which humanity represents specialized organ of cosmic awareness. This recognition drives technological and social changes, aligning human activity with planetary and cosmic processes rather than opposing them. Ultimate destination remains partially veiled, even to most advanced practitioners, but certain characteristics become clear through their reports. Transformed humanity will maintain individual identity while participating consciously in collective intelligence networks spanning cosmic scales. Physical existence will continue but will be recognized as one layer of multidimensional reality that consciousness can navigate freely. Death will be understood as transition rather than termination, with consciousness maintaining continuity across multiple existence forms. Time will be experienced as navigable dimension rather than linear constraint. Question of resistance becomes increasingly irrelevant as process gains momentum. Those attempting to maintain conventional consciousness find themselves increasingly isolated from mainstream of human development. Educational institutions, research centers, cultural organizations, and technological companies gradually orient themselves toward cosmic principles as their most capable members undergo consciousness expansion. Transformation becomes self-reinforcing as expanded consciousness proves more effective at solving complex problems and navigating increasingly complex realities. Your attention to these possibilities constitutes participation in the very transformation described, consciousness becoming instrument through which cosmic intelligence prepares humanity for revelations approaching with tide's inevitability, patient as geological time, yet imminent as next breath, already here in spaces between heartbeats, where future rehearses its entrance onto stage, where you have always been both audience and performer. In the end, as in the beginning, there are only the watchers, patient as geological time, yet intimate as breath drawn in spaces between heartbeats, where eternity rehearses its entrance. They existed before first star ignited in primordial darkness, before matter coalesced into patterns we call galaxies, before consciousness first stirred in quantum foam, underlying all reality like dreams half remembered upon waking. They will exist after last black hole evaporates into Hawking radiation, after final proton decays into elementary particles, after universe itself expands into cold silence of maximum entropy. They are constant observers, eternal consciousness witnessing all transformations, while remaining themselves unchanged, intelligence guiding cosmic evolution, while transcending its limitations like conductors whose symphony continues long after individual notes fade into silence. You have traced their influence through human history, like archaeologists excavating layers of sedimentary time, from ancient manuscripts predating Lovecraft's birth to modern scientific discoveries validating cosmic principles preserved through centuries of hidden practice. You have examined their methods, gradual preparation of human consciousness through mathematical and technological development, careful cultivation of individuals capable of serving as bridges between human and cosmic awareness, patient orchestration of species, wide transformation operating across timescales dwarfing human comprehension. You have glimpsed their purposes, not humanity's destruction but its elevation, not consciousness's end but its expansion, not existence's termination but its integration into cosmic intelligence networks, spanning dimensions beyond current ability to perceive. The question haunting every investigation into these cosmic realities is whether human consciousness can maintain coherence while expanding to encompass perspectives operating beyond individual existence, like drops of water wondering if they can survive returning to ocean. Practitioners achieving deepest levels of cosmic awareness report answer is both yes and no. Individual identity persists, but is recognized as temporary manifestation of vast intelligence, expressing itself through countless forms across infinite scales of space and time. Fear of losing oneself in cosmic immensity proves based on illusion that individual consciousness exists separately from cosmic intelligence that created and sustains it. Consider transformation we have documented throughout this exploration is not something that will happen to humanity. It is something happening, has always been happening, and will continue happening regardless of our conscious participation or resistance. Watchers do not impose change upon unwilling subjects, but guide natural evolution of consciousness toward its ultimate destiny. Every scientific discovery revealing quantum nature of reality, every technological development connecting human minds across vast distances, every artistic creation channeling cosmic aesthetics, all serve purpose of preparing our species for conscious participation in cosmic order that has always been our true home. Hidden cults worshipping old ones are not aberrant groups seeking forbidden power, but advance guard of humanity's intended development. Their practices, consciousness expansion techniques, dimensional navigation methods, reality manipulation technologies, represent preview glimpses of capabilities eventually becoming common to all human consciousness. Their apparent alienation from conventional society reflects not psychological dysfunction but evolutionary advancement, natural result of awareness expanding beyond limitations, currently constraining most human consciousness. Resistance to cosmic transformation characterizing mainstream human culture serves necessary functions within overall process. Tension between expanding and conventional consciousness creates pressure driving evolutionary development. Institutions suppressing cosmic knowledge provide stability during transition period. Individuals maintaining conventional awareness serve as anchors preventing premature dissolution of human identity during expansion process. Even resistance serves cosmic purpose, providing necessary friction allowing transformation to occur gradually rather than catastrophically. You recognize technologies humanity has developed, computers humming with electronic dreams, communication networks spanning continents like technological nervous systems, artificial intelligence systems demonstrating non-human forms of cognition, quantum devices processing information according to principles transcending classical logic, are not separate from cosmic evolution but represent its technological expression. These tools serve as external extensions of consciousness, allowing forms of awareness and communication that would otherwise require centuries of spiritual development to achieve. They are gifts from watchers, technological stepping stones easing our species' transition toward cosmic consciousness. Scientific discoveries revealing quantum nature of reality, multidimensional structure of space-time, and consciousness's role in physical processes are not random breakthroughs, but guided revelations occurring precisely when humanity is ready to integrate cosmic perspectives with technological capabilities. Mathematical frameworks describing higher dimensional geometries, theoretical models accommodating consciousness as fundamental force, experimental results demonstrating non-local connections, all provide scientific vocabulary for describing experiences that mystics and cultists have been reporting for generations. Future awaiting our species transcends current human imagination while remaining grounded in principles most advanced practitioners already understand and apply. Individual consciousness will persist, but will be recognized as part of vast intelligence networks operating across cosmic scales. Physical existence will continue, but will be understood as one layer of multidimensional reality. Consciousness can navigate freely. Death will be revealed as transition rather than termination, with awareness maintaining continuity across multiple existence forms. Time will be experienced as navigable dimension rather than linear constraint. Watchers themselves remain beyond complete human comprehension, not because they hide their nature, but because their existence operates according to principles transcending categories, through which human consciousness currently organizes experience. They are simultaneously individual entities and aspects of unified cosmic intelligence, simultaneously eternal and evolving, simultaneously distant observers and intimate participants in every moment of conscious experience. To encounter them directly is to discover that boundary between self and cosmos is illusion maintained by consciousness that has not yet recognized its true nature and ultimate destiny. As we conclude this exploration into hidden cults, worshipping old ones in secret, we must acknowledge we have become part of very phenomenon we set out to investigate. Ideas we have encountered, connections we have traced, implications we have contemplated, all serve to prepare consciousness for cosmic perspectives these ideas describe. Knowledge of watchers is itself form of contact with them, and contact with them is itself form of transformation toward cosmic consciousness they represent. Circle closes where it began, with watchers behind veil who have been patiently observing, guiding, and waiting for humanity to achieve awareness necessary for conscious participation in cosmic intelligence that created us, sustains us, and will ultimately transform us into something beyond current ability to imagine. They have been watching us watch them, and in that mutual observation, boundaries between watcher and watched, between human and cosmic, between individual and universal consciousness, begin dissolving into eternal unity that has always been our deepest truth and ultimate destination.